Welcome to yet another video from the city of Auckland. This one was filmed on Sunday, June 26th and features the unique tram line in Wynyard Quarter as well as these CAF-built EMUs out on the Western Line. We start with DSA 551 trundling along the Goldfields Railway with the 9:45 Waihi to Waikino service. I filmed this lot whilst on my way to Auckland. Just over 2 hours later, we finally made it to New Zealand's largest city. And while I did spend a fair bit of time in Wynyard Quarter, I didn't actually go for a ride on the tram until after I caught up with a couple of friends. And no, I don't mean these Class 66 and Class 67 models, I meant two actual people. This is a Class X1 tram from Melbourne, Australia, built way back in 1926. She arrived in Auckland in the early 2010s, just in time for the start of Dockline Tram service in 2011. The line runs in a 1.5 kilometre long loop round Wynyard Quarter, a former industrial area that saw considerable redevelopment in the last 20 years. If my research is correct, this initial circuit was originally going to be extended to Britomart, but of course that idea never came to fruition. Unlike MOTAT's tram line out at Western Springs, this one actually runs in the street like a traditional tram system. Indeed, it brings back memories of when I rode on the Christchurch tramway in 2018. Now we come back to the present day, where we'll see X1 number 466 a few more times before going for a ride around Wynyard Quarter. This tram's original number was 257, not to be confused with the bullied Pacific named 257 Squadron, mind. Eventually I returned to the Daldy Street tram stop, and didn't have long to wait before the X1 turned up again. I ended up getting a free ride, without referencing the Edgar Winter group, since the motorman gave me a MOTAT mate ticket instead of the regular $2 one. Not sure why, since I've never actually been a MOTAT mate.
A 1.5 kilometre loop around Wynyard Quarter and share with you a little of the story behind what was once the industrial heart of Auckland and is now our newest inner city suburb. Well, this is the restaurant heart of the quarter, and on the left hand side all the restaurants are sitting on North Wharf, our only north facing wharf here in Auckland. And there's only one wharf shed left now on North Wharf. It's this one coming up on the left with the red doors, built in 1926, the same year as this tram, but this tram was built in Melbourne, Australia. The wharf shed, of course, was built here in Auckland. Today the old wharf shed is home to the Wynyard Pavilion restaurant. There are some cafes dotted around the area if you just want a quick cup of coffee. One of them is just on the left here, Rushworth Cafe, and right next door to Rushworth, Gelatiamo, specialising in that beautiful gelato ice cream. And as we turn the corner into our next tram stop in Halsey Street, on our left is Koranga Plaza, the Welcome Plaza, and through the trees you might be able to see the white footbridge, over which you can walk to the Maritime Museum or downtown Auckland. A walk of about 20 minutes, and here right beside us the beautiful Park Hyatt Hotel with more stars than Hollywood. You're welcome. Oh, go out the back door. There you go. Give her a wee little there. She just needs a bit of encouragement. Thanks, guys. This area was first set up back in the 1920s to be the industrial heart of Auckland. And when it was set up, all the streets were named after men who had a background in the maritime industry. This is Halsey Street, and it's named after a man by the name of Admiral Lionel Halsey, who commanded a battle cruiser during the First World War called HMS New Zealand. His claim to fame was that no matter how many battles they fought while he was in command of the ship, they never lost a single man, and nor did the ship suffer any serious damage. You got no idea the number of people who say, go round me, I'm sitting here for a while we're on rails and we can't go round them. If you were standing right here where we are now, you would be over your head in seawater, because this was all part of Auckland Harbour. Victoria Park ahead of us was a fishing lagoon for the Maori people, and on the other side of Victoria Park, where Victoria Street is today, that actually was the beach or the seafront. So all of this land has been reclaimed from the sea. Victoria Park was completed first in 1905, this bit 1923, and right down the far end behind us was finally reclaimed from the sea in 1928-29. And when you remember that this was all part of the harbour, you'll understand why when the buildings on the right were built, they had to go down some 30 metres to find solid rock to set the foundations of the buildings on. And when we turn into Gordon Street, we'll be coming into our next tram stop. The reason we've got 4 stops is because this tramway was originally set up to be the link to downtown Auckland and then move people around the quarter. Unfortunately, the bit that takes us to downtown Auckland never got built, so we've only ever been able to operate on this 1.5 kilometre loop. On the right hand side sits the city bus depot, actually sitting on the site of what was Auckland's main city tram depot. Back in the days when Auckland had 256 trams serving the city and suburbs, 130 of them used to be parked here overnight, just as the buses are today. Trams in Auckland finished in 1956. To make another turn into our next tram stop, which is in Goldie Street. And Goldie Street's named after a man by the name of William C. Goldie, who was the very first chairman of the Auckland Harbour Board way back when Auckland was made a city in its own right in 1871. And William C. Goldie, as one of our first city councillors, also founded the Auckland Fire Brigade Service. So this street is named after William C. Goldie, but the ladies aren't forgotten because the park on the right hand side is named after his wife, Amy Goldie. She was a loud and long campaigner for women's rights and the suffragette movement here in New Zealand, and it's probably because of women like Amy Goldie that New Zealand was actually the first country in the world to give women the vote. Coming up on the left is our tram shed, which has been home to our 2 Dockline trams now for 11 years. This weekend was actually supposed to be our very, very last weekend to operate the tramway before the tram shed is demolished to make way for apartments. But one of the good things to come out of COVID, if anything good can come out of COVID, is that it has put a lot of projects behind time. So now we've got to the end of April before the tram shed is demolished and the apartments are built. So the tram will continue to operate every Sunday and every long weekend and public holiday through to the end of April next year. On the side of the tram shed, replica tram tickets from the days when it used to cost a penny a section to ride a tram in Auckland. This block of land used to have a whole lot of oil storage tanks on it, which is why Aucklanders called this area the Tank Farm. As a tribute to the days of the tank farm, Panuku built that tower there on the right hand side, hooked up 2 stormwater drain pipes to it to make for 2 really exciting slides. So if you haven't checked the slides out yet, come back and check them out before you go home. They are a lot of fun. The big concrete silos on the left, the last remains on the Golden Bay Cement Company that was based down here when this was the industrial heart of Auckland. They give this part of Wynyard Quarter its name, Silo Park, and this of course is our next tram stop. If you're leaving us now, remember your tram ticket's good till 4 o'clock. If you're staying with us, we'll be moving on again in just a moment with some more stories to share.
Upon returning to the northern end of Daldy Street, I left 466 and her motorman to their own devices. Of course by that I mean that 466 can somehow use an iPad. Suffice to say, this was a great little run, and I highly recommend trying it out while you still can. At the time of uploading, the Auckland Dockline Tram runs every Sunday and public holiday from 10 AM till 4 PM. If you're getting off a train at Britomart and want to go ride this tram, I would suggest going round to the northern end of Queen Street, which is just outside the station, and then getting on the CityLink bus to come to the quarter. Speaking of those unexpectedly fancy electric buses, I did end up catching one of them for the short hop back to Queen Street. Of course, and as is tradition at this point, I wanted to ride the AM electric units as well, and made it to Britomart station just in time to watch AM 849 leaving with the 14:38 service to Manukau. Over Matariki weekend, there were no trains running to Papakura or Onehunga, so instead I just went out to Sunnyvale on board AM 565. I'm saving most of my Sunnyvale footage for the next video, which will hopefully explain why I went to this particular station. After a short layover at Sunnyvale, I got on AM 714 to return to Newmarket. This is the last of the original batch of 57 AM units, which were built between 2013 and 2015. This was my last train of the day before going home, in which case I'll take this opportunity to thank you all for watching, and I hope you've enjoyed the video.
The next train arriving at platform 2 is a Western Line service to Britomart.